Hello and welcome back to Wiggins' Wild World. Before we get started on this week's episode, I want to warn you, this one is dark and it can be very disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The true crime story you're about to hear literally hits home for me. I was raised in Great Falls, Montana, where this takes place. I met and knew the monster behind this story. And if you'd like to hear that tale, make sure and join us next week for my in-depth, first-hand account of the monster you are about to meet. It's early February in Great Falls, Montana. Snowbanks crust the curbs, and a pale morning light spills between the rows of modest apartments next to Benefice Hospital. The kind of cold that makes the sound brittle under your feet. A 10-year-old boy named Zachary Ramsey leaves his home a few minutes after 7. His mother, watching him go, a backpack hanging low over one shoulder, a denim coat wrapped around his little body to keep him warm from the cold. His route to Whittier Elementary School cuts through an alley between 4th Street South and 6th Avenue. He's done it 100 times. That morning, he disappears into it, and he's never seen again. In Worcester, Massachusetts, in 1957, David Paul Brown is born on February 15th. He's the third child in an ordinary family, a mechanic father and a homemaker mother, and siblings who'd learned to give him space. By age 7, he's enormous for his age, withdrawn and obsessed with blood. Teachers report that he picks at scabs and sucks the blood from his fingers during class. One counselor writes, "Child displays an unusual fascination with injury and pain." That year, he lured a 5-year-old neighbor into his basement, tells her that he has a Ouija board and wants to show her a game. When she bends close, he loops his hands around her neck. The girl's screams bring his mother running. He claimed it was just a joke, but there's no official record, just whisperings and warnings. The habits begin to calcify. Petty theft, lies, voyeurism. He enjoys wearing uniforms, like postal shirts, fake badges, police uniforms, anything that lets him pretend to be someone else. March 1975, Hartford, Connecticut. He's 18 years old now, heavy-set, sweating inside a polyester police jacket. A boy walks to school, 8 years old, trusting. Brown flashes a fake badge and says, "There's been trouble up ahead. Hop in, I'll give you a ride." An hour later, that same boy is found bleeding in a ditch, clinging for life, barely breathing. He tells police, he said he was a cop. Brown isn't caught. Yet. He drives home, washes his car, and writes in his notebook, "Control felt good." 2 months later, another child, a 9-year-old girl this time. She convulses during the attack, vomits, and he panics, dumping her on the roadside. A witness noted his license plate, and when the police find him, he's calm and polite. During questioning, he tells officers, "I was just helping. Kids lie." But they don't buy it. Still, the sentence is light. Probation and counseling. He's young. First offense, the judge says. The system sighs, stamps the paper, and moves on. Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, 1977. Two boys, 10 and 6, were walking home from a matinee at the movie theater. A man in a beige car pulls up, flashing a badge. FBI, he says, you fit a description. He handcuffs one, forces both inside, and drives them to a wooded area. In his later confessions, one boy recalled, he told me to lie down, then he jumped on my chest until I couldn't breathe. The other was locked in the trunk listening. He managed to kick through the back seat and sees daylight, and escapes. Police swarm the area. They find the car idling. The handcuffed boy inside, alive, barely, and trembling. The attacker's name, David Paul Brown. His conviction, attempted murder, kidnapping, and aggravated assault. His sentence is 18 to 20 years. In prison, he tells psychiatrists about his fantasies. One report from Bridgewater State Hospital reads, subject expresses recurring sexual interest in young males, reports dreams involving torture, dissection, and cannibalism. States curiosity about the taste of human flesh. The staff mark him as high risk for the offense, but after years of good behavior, he petitions for a release. A judge, citing progress, signs a conditional release. The state parole board agrees. His new name, Nathaniel Bar-Jonah. He says he chose it for spiritual reasons, claiming a religious rebirth. But the court records note, name change coincides with release conditions, may be effort to obscure identity. Under parole conditions, he must leave Massachusetts. He moves across the country to the quiet town of Great Falls, Montana, to live with his mother. He's 34 years old, 375 pounds, and in a state that has no idea who this man really is. At first, he blends in. He drives a used Toyota, sometimes an old white sedan. His neighbors describe him as odd but polite. He volunteers at a local church and sometimes dresses as a police officer for Halloween. One local boy, later interviewed by the police, said he always had badges, said he used to be a cop back east. He'd show up at the park, watch us play, and sometimes he'd give us rides. He works small jobs like a short order cook, mechanic, occasional babysitter. Despite his size, he moves quietly, but rumors began to swirl. He takes an unusual interest in young boys, gives them candy, offers them rides home. Parents warn children to stay away. Then, February 6, 1996 arrives. Zachary Ramsey leaves home at 7:34 a.m. He walks past the dumpster-lined alley between 4th Street North and 6th Avenue. A neighbor, Kimberly McFadden, later tells investigators there was this big guy standing near the dumpster, pale, overweight, and he had something in his hands. A bag, I think. And he was watching the alley. At 7:45, Zachary turns the corner. By 7:50, he's gone. The snow that day was patchy, some footprints quickly covered. Police find no sign of struggle. For a while, the case sits unsolved. Then the name Nathaniel Bar-Jonah surfaces. Neighbors mention his deer meat cookouts, though he doesn't hunt and he doesn't own a rifle, yet his freezer is always full. December of 1999, police arrest Bar-Jonah outside an elementary school. He's wearing a dark jacket, a knit cap, carrying pepper spray, a toy gun, and a fake police badge. Search warrants are executed on his apartment and his mother's home. What they find is beyond comprehension. A file labeled Lake Webster. Inside, a handwritten list of 54 names, many local boys, some crossed out, others annotated with words: died, cooked, stew. Among them, the name Zachary Ramsey, died. Investigators also uncover coded writings, letters substituted for ingredients, numbers for measurements, and one line that read, "Little boy pot pie. Take fresh meat, add carrots, potatoes, and bake at 350 degrees. Police discover photos of children cut from magazines, a ceiling pulley with ropes, bondage materials, and a meat grinder still flecked with dark residue. A detective later recalled a court testimony. It was the smell that got me first. Metallic, like iron and fat. The freezer contents were unlabeled, some wrapped in butcher paper and some not at all. Samples were sent to a lab for testing. Some were identified as beef, pork, venison, but some samples came back as unidentified. The apartment on 4th Street North smelled of metal and mildew. Detectives moved slowly, gloved hands, trembling over boxes marked kitchen books, clothes. One officer muttered later in court, "It felt wrong to breathe in here." The first freezer was in the kitchen corner, old, white, enamel, and cracked. Inside, plastic bags were bound with twine, wrapped in butcher paper. Some labeled stew meat, others just remained blank. When asked what they were, Bar-Jonah shrugged. "Venison, I hunt," he would say. But the hunting license database showed no record of Nathaniel Bar-Jonah's name in Montana or Massachusetts. In the bedroom, police found a pulley anchored to a ceiling beam and a sustained rope beside a chair. In a drawer were photographs cut from magazines, Polaroids of neighborhood children playing in the snow that were taken without their parents' knowledge. Detective Mike McDermott later testified, "We kept finding more lists, names, addresses, ages. Some we could identify, others we couldn't. One page had columns labeled age, tender, and prepared. I'd never seen anything like it." The list that was titled Lake Webster contained 44 names. Among them were 3 confirmed assault victims from Massachusetts and one written in heavy ink, Zachary Ramsey, died. The Great Falls Police Department called in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Over several months, they mapped every note, every recipe, and every coded phrase. Forensic linguists matched his handwriting to entries of old psychiatric files. A page from a spiral notebook read, "Little boy stew, turnips, celery, onions, add red wine if fresh." Experts deciphered the numeric codes and they corresponded to the cooking temperatures. Bags from the freezer were sent to the Montana State Crime Lab. DNA analysis in 2000 was primitive, but reliable enough to detect human origin. 2 samples came back unidentified mammalian, inconclusive for species. The report stated, "may contain human hemoglobin markers, though sample is degraded." Neighbors began talking. One woman told reporters he'd have us over for cookouts. Said it was venison chili, but it didn't taste like any deer that I've ever eaten. The press got wind. Headlines read, "Cannibal Killer in Great Falls." Was missing boy served as dinner. The town panicked. Parents pulled children from school. Strangers were glared at in grocery store aisles. Everyone was frightened. Now in custody, Nathaniel Bar-Jonah sat silent for 48 hours. Then he asked for food, hamburger steak. When investigators confronted him with the list, he said calmly, "Those are fishing buddies. Lake Webster, Massachusetts. You're reading it wrong." When asked about the coded recipes, he smiled. "Ever read horror stories? That's all they are. They're just stories." But inside his storage unit, police found 21 bone fragments buried in soil beneath the concrete. The state pathologist identified them as human, likely a boy between the age of 8 and 13 years old. The remains were too damaged for DNA comparison. The discovery brought federal warrants, hours of excavation, and a community turned inside out. Great Falls had become a crime scene. March 2002, Cascade County District Court. The state of Montana versus Nathaniel Bar-Jonah. Charges: aggravated kidnapping, sexual assault, and assault with a dangerous weapon. Prosecutors could not file murder charges, no confirmed body, no DNA proof, but they printed a portrait of his monstrosity. In the opening statement, County Attorney Brant Light told jurors, "What you will hear, ladies and gentlemen, is not fiction. It is a life devoted to preying on children, first in Massachusetts, then here among us." They presented the freezer in the photos, the list, the notebooks. Witnesses took the stand. A former roommate testified he'd once found a pair of small sneakers and gloves stained in a dark bag labeled ZR. The defense countered that the writings were fantasy notebooks. The meat from ordinary game. The bones, chicken stock disregarded in the soil. His lawyer told the court, "You can't convict a man on horror fiction." Psychiatrists read excerpts from his Massachusetts file. One noted, "Subject experiences orgasmic reaction to imagery of mutilation." Another, "He exhibits no remorse. His effect is flat even when describing death." The jury deliberated 6 hours. The verdict: guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 130 years without parole. Judge John Warner said from the bench, "This court does not believe that rehabilitation is possible. The community must be protected from you forever." In prison at Deer Lodge, Bar-Jonah rarely spoke. Guards described him as polite, withdrawn, obsessed with religion and food. He fasted often, claiming divine visions. A prison psychologist later summarized, he viewed control as nourishment, food, children, faith, all interchangeable symbols of domination. He continued to deny any involvement with Zachary Ramsey's disappearance. His mother maintained his innocence until her death. Yet in 2000, investigators reopened missing child cases across 3 states. At least 4 names from Bar-Jonah's list matched unsolved disappearances between 1973 and 1998. No one could be conclusively tied to him. The legend grew. Rumors of human meat served at block parties, of sealed jars in his freezer never opened, most untrue, but plausible enough to fester in the community of Great Falls. April 13th, 2008. Guards find Nathaniel Bar-Jonah motionless in his cell. Cause of death, myocardial infarction, or a heart attack. Age 51. No final confession, no note, just an unfinished letter addressed to his sister reading, "They can't prove what isn't there." After his death, the state formally declared Zachary Ramsey deceased. His mother moved away from Great Falls. The alley remains, paved over, lined with dumpsters, and as quiet as fresh snowfall. A retired detective years later said, "We solved the case as far as the law lets us, but not as far as the heart needs." The Bar-Jonah investigation changed state law. Montana enacted stricter offender tracking protocols. Massachusetts completely revised its interstate notification policies, but none of it brings back the missing. To this day, the words Lake Webster remain partially undecoded. Numbers, letters, and times that may represent more victims. The apartment building where he lived has new tenants, and you can stand in that same alley today. It looks ordinary. There's potholes, trash bins, chain link fence rattling in the wind. But every small town has one. A place where something bad happened, where something terrible happened. But the world kept moving anyway. Nathaniel Bar-Jonah was flesh and blood, but what he left behind in Great Falls, Montana was something far colder. It seems the monsters that we fear most aren't in the woods. They're not under our bed. They're some of the people who smile and say hello, who grill burgers at the block party, and who promise you a safe ride to school. This has been Wiggins' Wild World, where history meets mystery. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next one.